In a world filled with cryptids, spirits, and the unexplained, who lights the way? Who walks beside us as we cross into the shadowy edges of the unknown? Could that person be a Codega? Welcome to the Magical Professions podcast, where we creatively explore the professions that live beyond the conventional, roles that connect the mundane to the mystical, the real to the unreal. I'm your host, Milena Rivkovska-Martin, and today I want to welcome a very special guest, Rye the Codega. Rye is a modern-day Codega, a guide and a storyteller, rooted in an ancient role, one who escorts travelers through the night, lantern in hand, warding off hosts, thieves, and demons. As the host of the Codega's Codex of Curiosities, he curates tales of UFOs, aliens, cryptids, and paranormal phenomena, inviting listeners to explore the dark, strange, and often unseen corners of our reality. But Rye's work is more than podcasting. It might be a magical profession of its own, one of collecting mysteries, walking through shadows, and keeping the flame of curiosity alive for those who dare to ask questions. Oh, welcome, Rye. It's a great pleasure to have you on our podcast. Thank you so much for coming. And can you please introduce yourself and let our listeners know where you are joining us from, what part of the world? Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. I want to say thank you so much for having me on, and what a fantastic introduction as well. I don't have to say much either. It was great. So yeah, my name is Rye. I host the Codega's Codex of Curiosities, but you pretty much gave that introduction better than I could. So I want to say thank you to that. Now, I am currently located in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. It is quite warm out right now. It's beautiful here, and I found my way down here following my heart.
Yes, thank you, Rye. And in our podcast, we'll look at everything through the lens of mystical, magical. Maybe you can share something about the place where you live right now, Yucatan Peninsula, and especially because your heart, as you said, brought you there. So there was something that probably was entangled in that void for knowledge and mystery that brought you there. At least I think that might be one of the reasons.
It's one of the reasons for sure. This area is fueled with stories of mystery and mystics and everything. And with this ancient past that is here as well, with the pyramids, there are more pyramids here than you'll find in Egypt as well. And it's really interesting. There is so many sites. There's a site right near me about a half-hour away called Edsna, and it's just a beautiful place to go to. It's really, really fascinating when you start to discover what's here. There are so many stories of little people here as well. And it's something that I never even heard of before. These little people are called aluches. They are tiny little, like duendes as well. And throughout all cultures, there is always these stories of these little people. Whether you go to, Ireland, they got the leprechauns, or you go into the US, they have what I said is the duendes as well. But here is the aluches. And these creatures are creature of legend. But are they really? Because so many people, you cannot throw a rock without hitting someone who's had either a personal story or someone in their family who's had a story of an encounter with an aluche. Personally, in the family that, my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law, they each have their own encounter. My sister-in-law, when she was about 4 or 5 years old, went outside and was pretty much dancing like pretty close to an aluche itself. It's this silvery type of being that was glistening in the moonlight. My brother-in-law was staying at a house in a smaller village, and just outside the door about 1 or 2 in the morning, you could hear children laughing, even though there's no children out at night. And the caretaker of the house was saying it's an aluche, and they needed to put out an offering plate to keep the aluche at bay. So they would make a plate of food and sweets and slide it out underneath the door. They said once they did that, the laughing and the kids' sounds all went away. Now, that is one of the reasons why I went here, was just the vast mysteries that are here. It's really, really interesting. it doesn't matter where you go here in this country, there's so many stories. And if it's not the pyramids, it's the Cave of Crystals in northern Mexico. It's this cave filled with these massive selenite crystals. They are about 10 feet in width. Length, they can range up to 20 meters long. And this was this cave discovered. And that's in the state of Chihuahua. I lived near there as well at one point, and I was trying to see if anybody could take me in, but unfortunately, it is a pretty harsh environment, and you have to wear special suits to go into that cave. What else is there? In the center of Mexico, we have Teotihuacan, which is the pyramid of the sun and the moon. And there's 3 pyramids there that line up exactly with Orion's belt, and the same as the pyramids in Giza as well. They're in that same configuration. So it's really fascinating that there's, when everybody hears pyramids, they always think Egypt, but no, right here in the heart of Mexico and all these Latin American countries, there is so much history that is just there. A lot of it is hidden under the jungle. It costs so much money to excavate and to reveal these. So if you were driving through, usually in this area in the Yucatan Peninsula, and you see like a large hill out in the jungle, it's most likely not a hill. That's probably a pyramid that just has not been uncovered yet.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for giving us that glimpse into that mystery of the place you live in. And where did this interest of mystical, unknown begin for you? Where did it start?
Where did it start? I was just talking with a student of mine prior to this, and I was just telling her about it started because I grew up with so many strange paranormal, supernatural experiences that I don't want to say it became normalized because it's never really normal. It's usually in the category of weird, but there were so many things that happened to me when I was younger. It's something that I sought after. I sought after to get answers, but also to have a way to fight back, per se, because there's these things in the night, we will say, that go bump. And sometimes I want to bump back because I'm tired of them giving you this fear of sorts and trying to provoke you to be in the fearful state. So winding back, like I said, I've had many, many experiences. One of them was when I was 9 years old. This isn't a paranormal, it's more of a supernatural experience. I was running a race and I was pushing myself beyond normal. I had decided that, well, there were some people in front of me and I needed to catch up to them because this was a race for a school and I needed to be with the group. And so as I exerted myself beyond my normal capabilities, and this is kind of strange, I shot out of my head. So I was able to see myself and the other kids running, but I was about 15 to 20 feet up in the air watching everybody from above. When I did see myself running, because I saw them running in the front, and when I saw myself, that's when I had a realization that this is not where I'm supposed to be. And it was instantly back into my body finishing the race. So that was one of my most memorable experiences at that age. Now, continuing from that, it was a life of seeing things or people that should not be there. Perhaps one of the scariest experiences happened when I was around the age of 17 to 19. I can't remember specifically. I was working a part-time job and I had to be up really early in the morning. But I had just been out with my friends. I was over at a friend's place and we were playing video games as teenage boys do. And I had gotten home. And like I said, I haven't said, I used to live in Canada. And as I got dropped off, the northern lights that night were out in full force. And I remember standing outside and watching them. They're just this awe and beauty. They're beautiful to watch. They're dancing in the sky. But I'm like, well, I got to be up really early in the morning, so I need to go to bed. So I hop into bed, get ready for bed and hop into bed. And I'm watching the clock. And many of us do this where we'll look at the clock and we're like, if I fall asleep now, I got 7 hours and 43 minutes of sleep. And then you close your eyes and you kind of look over the clock again. Well, I got 7 hours and 13 minutes of sleep. And you keep watching the clock, deciding I'm tossing and turning and not falling asleep. So I was laying on my side and it wasn't a voice in my head. It wasn't someone telling me to do something. It was just this feeling that I needed to look up. I needed to stare up. So I roll onto my back and I look up, and floating above me, about 3.5 feet above me, was this figure, this blacker than black figure. And I could see the head, I could see the shoulders, the neck, the torso, the arms down by the side. And when it got around to the waist area, it dissipated into a white smoke. Okay. Kind of like a Hollywood-esque, what you would think a ghost would look like in Hollywood. Now, the rest of the body, though, like I said, was solid black. And that unto itself is scary. But the eyes were glowing red. They weren't like shooting flashlights, but it was like this incandescent red glow that just originated from the eyes. And I looked at this thing for approximately 1 to 3 seconds. It was there before it was gone. And then I laid there and I did not move. I could not move. Some people have referred to this as sleep paralysis, but I was not asleep. I need to stipulate that this was me not being asleep. Your adrenaline rushes. You have three things you're going to do. You're either going to fight, you're going to flight or flee, or you're going to freeze. And I did the third, the latter, which was I froze in place. I was scared stiff. I did not move. I don't know how long I laid there for, but the next thing I recall was waking up in the morning and wondering what just happened. I don't know, but at that time I didn't know, but now I've learned that these are shadow beings. So these are beings of shadow that haunt our world, and sometimes they live in the shadows and they come out to, and I believe that they try to feed on our fear. So that event right there was probably the pinnacle of what made me follow this path. I was always interested in mysteries. I was always interested in the Bermuda Triangle and Loch Ness Monster. Those were my two favorite things. But this here was kind of like I need to go further in this. I need to find answers. Now it's bring people together. But then it was just, I need to find answers and I need to not be afraid. That was it.
And how did that experience change your perception of the world? What happened in your world view after this experience?
Well, I always knew that there was something else out there, but a lot of times it was on a TV show, right? You're watching Unsolved Mysteries and you see these things on Unsolved Mysteries, even though I did have numerous other experiences, but this was the most intense. This was the one that derived the most fear out of me, to the point that it was there to scare me. And it was showing this dominance over me. And there was other events after that happened that I was terrified of as well. And I'm like, what do I do now? So my perspective on the world, it always was the same. It always was, I know there's more out there. I know that there is this unseen world, but I never really got an answer at that point. But it was, I need to start to find answers. It was, I need to start being deeper. And it was a long, long journey. It was a journey of stepping away from my faith, going to a different direction, because my faith didn't have any answers. I didn't ask, though. That's another thing, is that along with these types of experiences, a lot of times there's shame and embarrassment because you're the one who's experiencing it. No one else is experiencing these things as well. So who do you open up to? People will think you're crazy. You start telling them all this. Oh, then you're having a psychotic breakdown. I'm not, though. I'm a normal person. I'm out there working regular hours, regular jobs. I was working regular jobs, but these things happen. It's like, who do you talk to? And it took a while before I was able to talk freely with people about this. A long while. It was a slow process. In the beginning, no one. I didn't mention this to anybody. But then years and years later, that's when I started to open up. And that's when I started opening up to my family about it. And then my family starts telling me that they've had experiences as well. So it wasn't just an isolated thing that it was just me. My mother was having a lot of experiences. My father had some. My sister did. My other sister didn't because, well, that's a whole other story. She actually kind of shut this down, but that's for another day.
Yes, that's very interesting that you mentioned that. We had a podcast with Jeff Lippman. He mentioned that many of the people who have certain experiences or who have certain gifts very often prefer not to tell about it to anybody, including their relatives. But after they open up, they find out that actually their relatives, their family also have similar experiences.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree totally with you, because that's one thing that I found. And it wasn't just isolated to my immediate family. When I start talking, my cousins start telling me about having experiences as well. It's not like I'm special or we're special or anything like that, but people are sensitive to these things. It's just that our frequency is a little more dialed into something else, something different. And that is when you start talking and you start finding out that this has been happening. It's been happening on my mother's side and it's been happening on my father's side as well. So, sometimes it's just one side of the family, but apparently it seems to be happening on both sides of the family for me.
Yes, that's very interesting. But in general, if we look at our senses, they're also very limited. Yes, even if we compare it to the senses of animals, insects. So we live in this very narrow space and visual spectra and sound. It's very possible that you have a bigger range or a different range of those spectra. And this helps you to see things that maybe other people don't, and this might be genetically supported.
I definitely think you're right on that one. So that's a great way to put it. So thank you.
Yes, no, thank you. So can you now tell what did you start doing after you decided, okay, I need to figure things out. I need to understand what it is and also be able to fight back if I need, yes, to protect myself. So what was your journey? And I also want to mention that many people feel that there is something
Yeah.
out there, that our world is really multidimensional. It's not as flat, but not everyone would just go and start exploring things, yes, doing something about it, but you did.
Yeah, it was a long journey. For me, I was born and raised Catholic, very strict Catholic household, and I felt that I wasn't getting answers. And I won't even say they worked out of the Bible. They stayed on the surface of the Bible, and we just read stories, and that was it. There was no real gain or depth. We never went in deep into it. So I started going into, and before we go too far, I don't want to bash anybody. If anybody has followed their faith in certain ways, perhaps someone has gone into the New Age world, and that is what I did. I went into the New Age, and I found myself there, and I started to find answers there. But this isn't the end of the story. So for those who are getting all upset, this isn't the end of the journey. So for me, it was going to the New Age. From there, I found a shaman, and I studied under the shaman for a year, and she taught me a lot and gave me a lot of tools to use into protecting myself. Okay. And from there as well, I ran into a medicine woman, a native medicine woman. And this medicine woman, this is in Alberta, and this medicine woman took me in, and I ended up becoming her firekeeper for her sweat lodge and being kind of like initiate like a student of hers, of learning underneath her, something that just happened. I don't want to say like I was searching for this and that's what I was going to do. The shaman, yes, I was searching for that. But the medicine woman, it just kind of happened that way. And she taught me a lot. She gave me ways to protect myself and how to clear my spaces and protect my household. It was very interesting. It was a very memorable time of my life. It wasn't like this joyous, amazing journey. It was a lot of hard work, put in a lot of time, helping her, rebuilding her sweat lodge as well, and being there almost every other week, going out there, helping her and helping her with the lodge as well. So it was a lot of introspective work as well. In the New Age side, everybody is like, oh, it's all light and love, but it isn't. And that's one thing I started to actually push away from this New Age world because it's all light and love. But no, it isn't. There is a balance in this world. And we have to accept that with the good, there is the bad. And we have that within ourselves as well. So we need to look within and deal with our own shadow, not to mind the pun that the shadow being that I saw, but we need to go in and deal with our own demons. That's an everlong process. It's a process that we will always be doing. We'll never be a perfect person. There's always more that needs to be done. But that was my journey, was at that point. Then it was a circle back, actually. It was me returning to God. And through all this, it was me following my path back to God. God was always there. It was always the creator. It was different names, but it was going back to becoming a Christian. And I don't say I'm full on Christian or anything like that, but I'm approaching it from a different view now. And I'm looking at the Bible at a different way now too. I look at it as a history book because there is so much information in there. And what I was seeking was in there as well. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of information. And now I'm getting teachers on my show who are going into much depth into the Bible, not just these surface stories that people might hear, but there's so much history within that book that it's quite interesting. You start to really learn how to live your life and what you should be doing. And you also learn about our real past. That's another thing, is that finding that our past that we're being told isn't our real past. And it's a discovery. The history is written by the victors. They leave a lot of things out. And when they leave things out, you end up repeating it. And we need to actually have the truth so we can not repeat history and get on the right path. It doesn't feel like I'm going into too much depth into it, but that is kind of the gist of it. So for me, it was turning away from the church, going into the New Age, just self-discovery, working with the shaman, becoming a shamanic practitioner, taking that and going to work with a medicine woman and, at a sweat lodge, and then circling back. But I think it was always part of the plan. But I think that the New Age is a little bit of a quagmire where it catches people. People get stuck there. I think it should be used as a tool to move on and to grow spiritually.
Very, very interesting story. And what resonated with me what you mentioned about the balance. And I think that's very important because when we are talking only about light,
Yes.
we have a day, but we have a night as well in our day. And if there would be only light
Yes.
all 24 hours, probably we would have a lot of problems. And many things wouldn't be the way they are, and our world wouldn't function properly. So paying attention to that is very important.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
And also looking into a Bible, like into many other books, but I think Bible has so much layers in it. And I think it's in the same way as you started noticing and always felt that in this world, there are so many layers. It's not as flat. The same way in this book, if you start reading and really getting in depth, there are layer after the layer and after layer. So maybe with you starting seeing more and more layers, like you did shaman practices, you worked with the medicine woman, and starting seeing more and more layers in the world, you started seeing more and more layers in the Bible, in this book. So that process connected you with understanding those processes within.
Yeah. I agree totally. Yeah. And people don't discount the Bible. There is some crazy stories in there. One of the stories that comes out, and I'm not going to say just in the Bible, but through all cultures, is of giants. And people will be like, what? That's crazy. It's like, no. Every culture has stories of giants. Do we think it's just an allegory and we'll just throw it away? No, because this is real. I was just talking with a gentleman who I interviewed named Freddie Silva, and he was telling me he was here in the Yucatan Peninsula. Mm-hmm. He got invited into one of the pyramids as a special kind of treat. And they're like, this doesn't happen. And buried within this pyramid is a red-headed giant, around 8 feet tall. And it's not like huge giant, but there is stories of red-haired giants. That is a common thing. It doesn't mean that they're all red hair, but a lot of them are. Like the giant in Kandahar in Afghanistan was a red-haired giant. There's too many stories to not to throw it away. And if people are like wondering, well, where in the Bible? Well, David versus Goliath, first of all. Goliath wasn't a large person. He was a giant. Well, he actually had 3 brothers and 1 son that were with him too, that were also giants as well. That's why David picked up 5 stones, because it was one for each of the brothers and the son. So this is, and in Genesis 6, they talk about the giants as well. And there's a specific name that they talk about, which is the Nephilim. And it is a very intriguing. It was something I never knew I was going to get into, to go into that much depth into. But the Nephilim is something that I currently find really intriguing. And that's kind of one of the things that just keeps popping up on my show. It's not like I'm searching after these guests. These guests just kind of find their way into me. And I find that interesting when you start attracting these certain guests, and it's like the show, it's almost like if it's living itself, it's moving in a direction. And I just allow it to go that way and just let it go naturally and see where it goes.
I agree with you. Sometimes we create something and then it starts the life on its own. So you need to grow it, and you did beautiful growing. You supported its growth. Now it grew up and starts moving on its own. Yes, like your baby grew up, basically.
Exactly. It just grows into this own thing itself. So I created the show as a place for me to get answers. I created the show so I could listen to other people's stories. I created the show so I could bring people together so that they could find answers. Because if you start bringing someone in from, let's say from Europe, and someone from South Africa and someone from Florida who all have the same experience, they can get together, compare notes, and realize that, okay, maybe I'm not that crazy because we have so many similarities with our experiences.
Yes, I absolutely agree about that. And why do you think it's important to search for this information, to get answers? I understand for you, for example, it was that one case and you wanted to learn how to protect yourself. You learned a lot with this medicine lady. You know how to protect yourself. I don't think there is a problem anymore with shadows. So that's it. Why do you still continue to search for answers? Why is it important for you? What difference does it make that we know that, yes, there were giants? How is it relevant to our everyday existence? Why are we still continuing to search for those answers?
Okay, so that is a great question, because that's a question that my wife asked me as well. It's just like, why do you still have to do this? And it's because the answers are being hidden from us. Okay. And that sounds so clandestine or cliche, but if we find these answers and we're like, yes, the truth is there, that means rest of possibly, and I'm not saying everything, all these conspiracies are true, but if we are able to poke holes within one truth, which then we realize that it's a lie, that means that the rest of the world or what we're being fed can also be that of a lie as well. So it's on the search for the actual truth. Where does the truth begin and where do the lies end? We need to have that so that we can actually live properly. And some people will say, well, let's say flat earth or round earth. They're like, what's the difference? I don't care. Well, the difference is if you find that answer, then we can start to say, well, then it relates to this. It gives me more answers this way. I know that these are the truths, even though they're being hidden from us. So, again, it's just very cliche, but it's just that the truths are all being hidden from us. They're all being obfuscated from us. So we need to search for the answers. And there's so many things that we're being lied to in this day and age. It's ridiculous. And it's like, well, if we go back to The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, where there was the one cipher, he wanted to be plugged back in. He's like, I don't care. I know this is not steak, but it tastes good. And I just don't want to have any more of these concerns. I just want to live my life in a bliss. And you can live your life like that. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm not that type of person. I'm that person that wants to know why, what happened, what was the truth, why are we really here? Instead of like saying, I need to work from 9 to 5, go to work, watch my Netflix on the weekend, watch some sports games, and then do it all over again. I don't want that. I want to live a life where there's something more out there, and I want to know it. As a species, we're inherently explorers. Okay. And some people believe that it's all done. We've explored all the lands. We have everything. We've seen everything, but there's so much more left to be explored. We have the celestial bodies. We have space. We have the deepest oceans, but we also have, like you said, other dimensions. There are other things that we can't see that are there. And if people don't believe that, we see less than a percentage of the full light spectrum. That means there is over 99% that we don't see. And when we talk about not seeing things, well, think about frequencies. Think about Wi-Fi. If we could actually see these types, the light spectrum, we'd actually see the radio signals. We would see the Wi-Fi. We would see Bluetooth signals. We would see it all. It'd probably drive us a little crazy, but there's so much out there to this world. Like, how are we talking right now? We're talking by Wi-Fi. How is that happening? Oh, through a frequency. This is happening. Just because you can't see the actual connection doesn't mean it's not happening. It's happening right now. So there is things that are happening in this world, and I want to know why or how. And that is why, because I'm an explorer.
Yes, and I love that. And because of this desire to bring the light to the dark, to the unknown, you chose this very interesting name to your podcast.
Yes.
The Codega's Codex of Curiosities.
Yes. That's exactly it. You know, I discovered the name Codega as a profession. It was a profession in the 14th and 16th century in Venice. And it was, like you said, it was this person who would escort people through the streets of Venice with a light, lighting up the way, keeping away thieves and criminals and demons and ghosts, and telling stories along the way, and also receiving stories along that way. And he would guide people to safety, you know, to their home. And that's what I feel that I want to do. I want to light the way so you can see what is really out there. Because when we're in that darkness, we can't see past that certain point. But when we put the lights to it, we can see for what it really is. Is that really a ghost, or is it just a guy waiting in ambush to rob you? Is it really a horse, or is it something else? Is it a creature that we've never seen before? It could be either or. And that's the point, is to light things up so we can actually see them for what they really are. Because our reality is much more different than we're led to believe.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And I like this Codega approach.
Yeah.
And from my personal perspective, this is a magical profession. So you might not consider yourself as such, but I think that you really are. And again, magical profession is not something that, out of a magic movie. Yes, but it's real work. And you're doing it. You're doing it with your podcasts. You are doing it with your constant curiosity. What's next? What else is out there? And I think what is also very important, that you mentioned that turning point when you were scared when you had that dark figure, and it really pushed you to start this path because you wanted to shed a light on what it is, discover what it is, and make sure that you know about tools or processes that can protect and, if needed, to fight back. So that is actually very much ties into your podcast names of the Codega. Yes, it's a person lighting the way and protecting, if needed, the people who are nearby. So I think that's a real magical profession you have.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of many different hats that I wear right now. It's not the only thing I do, but I thoroughly enjoy this.
Yes. And if we look through that prism of magical profession, because we have all those different layers beyond just our world that we can see, and we have many just normal profession in our world, but if we have more layers, we need to have more professions that are beyond the usual ones and that would be performing some functions on those layers and the connections between our world and other dimensions. So having people on your podcast exploring those other dimensions, other layers.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you noticed any other magical professions that you can talk about?
If we had to, it would be the researchers in the Bible, such as Gary Wayne. He writes on the Genesis 6 conspiracy, which is all about the Nephilim. He goes into great detail about that. Then there's other authors who, I would say an author is a magical profession, especially, you're creating something. And I don't want to say, I would say a fictitious author is someone who is they can turn dreams into reality. Like if you go into a library, if you stand back and you think about it, these are people's dreams that have been brought to reality. That is amazing and beautiful. But the people that I talk to are people who have written books on their own personal experiences. Perhaps Karen Wilkinson, she's a lifelong alien abductee. That is a magical profession because she is bringing light to that, because she is looking at something that has happened that has been extremely negative in her life. And this is something I've talked about too on my show, is that people have taken these negative experiences and flipped them. Yeah, there's still these bad experiences, but they've turned them into something good. They've turned it into a useful tool. So she's taken this lifelong abductees, written a book on it, and helping other people who have had the same experiences as her. I thoroughly applaud that. For one thing, it's extremely brave to put your experiences into a book, because then it's open. I do talk about mine, but when you write in a book, it just seems that it's much more accessible to the public. And it's open to this ridicule that in the beginning, you will all face. You will all face the ridicule of some of these experiences that you've had. So it's magical to be able to put these things into writing and to state your truths. So I would say those are some of them. Some other ones would be like archaeologists exploring, I don't want to say like the outskirts, but the outlying theories. They're bringing to light. There are things out there that mainstream archaeology will not touch. And the reason why they won't touch it is because it wrecks everything that they've built their career on. So there's things out there that will flip things upside down. There is that will put our civilization will date our civilization much later. There's things out there that show us that the Egyptians weren't the ones who built the pyramids. They founded the pyramids. And when I mean found, I mean they literally found this from a previous civilization. There's clues that show us that the Sphinx is so much older, but mainstream will not accept that. We're looking at geologists who have come together and said, yeah, there is water erosion on the Sphinx that dates it past 15,000 years. It's so much older than what you're saying it is. But they won't accept it because they're too high on their ego. They don't want to say we were wrong. And that's the biggest thing. People need to say, it doesn't matter what profession you're in, you should be able to look at something and say, I was wrong. It's okay to say that. It doesn't matter what you do, humble enough to say that I was wrong and start over again. Sometimes it's difficult. People will respect you more if you can say I was wrong and then you can start over again.
And I think it ties back to what you were talking about, the darkness inside us, because we can all make mistakes and that's okay.
Yes.
And again, if we accept it, we bring it to the light and we're saying, yes, I did this mistake. It was wrong, but let's make it right. But if we don't accept it, we will never be able to recognize it and move to a new direction.
I agree. And I say that like we have to let parts of us die when we ever accept new truths. So whenever we are presented with a new truth that we can't deny, the part of us that used to deny it has to die. And then we are reborn again every time. Whenever there's a new truth that's presented to us, it's okay. We can mourn that side of us that's gone because it's difficult. It's sad, but need to grow. We always need to grow. And I've had experiences where it was sleepless nights because I was presented with something that contradicted my beliefs. It was so crazy that I could not sleep. But there's a saying that says, the truth sets you free, but first it will piss you off. It's so wholeheartedly, I have to agree with them, that it is so true that there are times where I get very upset because it contradicts what I stood for. And then I realize that I was wrong, and that is okay. Have that dark, long night, and then you have the dawn in the morning where you come to that realization and you wake up with a new perspective. And that is what we should always be open to do. Admit you're wrong and then grow from that.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And as I understand, you had quite a few of those moments over your journey.
Yes.
And I'm sure that your point of view on our world, on how we live, how we perceive things around us changed tremendously during that journey. So if you would remember yourself when you started this journey with all the questions you want to get answered and today, and compare your outlook on our world, what would be the biggest change that you notice?
One of them would be my naivety. I was very naive. Also, everything, absolutely everything is connected. That is the thing that used to file this over here, this over here, and this over here. But then you start to realize that it's not just a little puzzle here and a little puzzle here and a little puzzle here. It's one big puzzle. These are just the pieces that we're putting together, this one and of this one. And it is essential that we all realize that this is, I'm referring back to almost, it kind of seems like a new age thing, but it's also a religious thing as well. It's very spiritual that we are in a spiritual war, and you need to all be aware of this. It's super important that, for one thing, we're all being pitted against one another. We are back to the Colosseum with the gladiators fighting each other, except we're in the computer fighting each other online, and we're doing this. And those in charge, the famous quote is, give them a circus and bread and then they'll never revolt. It's exactly what you're doing. We're fighting each other, and they give us these sports shows to watch or these sports activities. And then they give us all this food, McDonald's and everything. And we're so caught up with this. We're so focused on, well, that guy said to me this on the internet, this guy said this thing. Step back from it all and realize that we're all on the same boat together, but we're being pushed to fight each other when we really shouldn't. There's enemies that you don't know. When you get together and have an actual discussion, then you start to realize we're much closer than we're being told we are. So I would say that the person that started the show was maybe someone who's a little naive, maybe a little more one-sided. Now I'm this person who sees things, I believe I see things a lot greater, a lot better. It's still so much more to understand, still so much more work to do, still so much more. But I think the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. And I think that's a very brave thing to say, because we don't know very much at all. I used to believe I used to know a lot. Now I'm realizing it's just a drop in the bucket. I don't know enough. I don't know a lot.
Yes, and it's a very interesting experience when you realize that. How do you protect yourself from stopping doing what you are doing, exploring things after the realization that no matter how much I am trying to learn, there is more being uncovered that I don't know. And I understand that I will never learn everything I want to know because it's just expanding exponentially.
It really is. So the one thing I realize is that there are many other people specializing in doing their own research. Okay. So it's not that I need to go and research that specifically. I can let that person do that, and then they can tell me about what they found out. I don't have to still believe that. We have to treat everything with a grain of salt. We have to be skeptic on everything. So we take that information and sit with it for a little bit. And then maybe you get someone else give you some contradictory information. Sit with that a little bit. And maybe somewhere in the middle, you'll find the truth. So for me, I will never find all the truths, but I can find little bits and pieces, and other people are going to find bits and pieces. And maybe together we can come together and put a much larger picture together if we actually are able to talk and share and work together.
Yes, I agree. And I've heard this saying, and I believe that it's true that the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, and I think it's so wonderful that more and more people are being awakened with this call to find what is beyond, what is the real truth about us. Yes.
Yeah.
And like you said, if we put all that information, all those perspectives together, maybe all together we can find that truth that it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree totally. I just want people to realize that there is more out there that we're not being told. And it goes with a lot of things. There's a lot of things. We're just being played one way or another. And it doesn't matter if you're left or if you're right, all being played in this together. You got to realize that you are being divided on purpose. So come together and work together, because otherwise you're going to be separated further and further.
Absolutely agree. And you have how many years of your podcast already?
Well, this podcast itself is just over 1 year. I did have one prior to this that I was working with a co-host, and that was for about 9 months. So in total, I'm almost coming to 2 years now in total for hosting a show. But my own show, it originated in February of last year. I appreciate it.
Congratulations on that. And what was the most memorable episode that you've recorded so far?
Okay, so the most memorable episode, it's not the most watched, the most listened to episode, but for me, it was one of my earlier first episodes, and it was the gentleman named Andy. I originally called it Nightmare in Michigan. I think I might have called it now like some demon in Michigan or something like that. But Andy was very difficult to nail down. And what I mean is to like finally to get it to come on the show. At first, it was like, I was upset. Why you keep bailing on me? Why you keep canceling on me? But it was because he was terrified. He was scared. When I actually interviewed him, you could see that he's reliving this experience all over again. He had talked about it once only before on a different show. So this is the second time. And after talking about it again, he told me that he was having issues again at home. So what had happened? I'll give you a brief rundown, the Coles notes, so to speak. So Andy was going to school in Michigan, and everybody was leaving for the summer. They were heading back to their states that they lived in. And he decided he's going to stay and he's going to work to make some money because he worked at a hotel. He worked the night shift at a hotel. He found a gentleman who allowed him to stay at his place. And so while staying there, the guy had to leave away for work. So he said, I need you can watch the place, you can stay here, but you need to watch the place and watch my dog. Oh, that's a great deal. So Andy was in the shower one night and there was a big storm. He heard the door fly open on the house and he came rushing out. The door was open. The storm was coming into the house more or less, and the dog was nowhere to be seen. He checked the whole house. The dog was gone. So he's like, oh my gosh, I got to go find the dog outside at night in this storm. So he gets dressed, runs outside, and he's looking for the dog. He can't find it, but he hears the dog collar. There was like a bell on the dog collar, and it was across this field, this empty field. So he continues to run in this field. As he's running towards the sound, he gets hit extremely hard in the face by something. Something just took him out. Next thing he knows, he's waking up, lying in the mud on this field. This field is empty. I just want to make sure you guys know that there was nothing in there for him to run into. He gets up and he's got a bloody nose and he's covered in mud and he's soaking wet. He's like, I need to go back to the house. He doesn't know how long he was there for, how long he was out for. So he goes back to the house. The door is closed because he had closed the door when he left. Dog is inside the house, bone dry. It was not wet. And he was like, what just happened? Why? The dog was outside. I swear I heard it, but it's inside, completely dry. So he cleaned himself off, finished a shower, and was like, not realize what happened. Comes the next event. So he's working the night shift at the hotel. He says it's pretty much dead. He barely, maybe one or two guests a night at most. So he is working the front desk, and the doors open to the entrance. There's sliding electric doors. They open up, and he's kind of standing there. No one came in. And then he feels like a gust of wind go by him as if someone had walked fast past him. And he's like, okay, that's strange. Then the elevator doors open. No one's in there. The elevator's doors close. The elevator goes up to the third floor. They open again because he's watching this on his camera. And he's like, this is extremely strange because there's no one calling the elevator. The doors closed and that was it. And he's like, that was very strange, but okay. You try to explain it away. You try to rationalize it. About an hour later, he looks on his cameras and he sees someone on the third floor standing by the vending machines and the ice machine. He can see just the shadow, the back, the head. He sees like a hooded figure standing there, motionless. And this is going on for maybe like 15 minutes. So he's like, okay, I need to go up and check. So he goes up to the third floor to check. No one is there, but on the ground is this putrid black water, this black liquid. He says it smelt like death. It was the worst smell he's ever smelt in his life. So he's like trying to, again, explain this away. Maybe it was coming from the ice machine. Maybe the ice machine melted or something like that. So he cleans it all up with the mop and bucket, cleans it up, goes back on with his daily activities. Then a little while later, about an hour, maybe 2 hours later, he sees the figure again standing in the exact same position. He goes back up. No one there. Because he's like, I'm going to catch it this time. I'm not going to wait. So he goes back up. No one there. The water is there again, this black putrid water. And he's like, what is going on? So he cleans it. He finishes his daily duties. He had to do this like checklist. He completes this checklist. And then around 4 or 5 in the morning, the elevator opens again. No one comes out. And then he feels a rush of wind by him. And then the doors for the hotel open and close as if someone's leaving. Okay. So very, very strange. And he's like, I have no idea. He goes home, just about to go to sleep. He gets a call from his manager from the hotel. His manager says, I need you to come in. And he's like, well, like, why do you need me to come in? I'm just about to go to sleep. You didn't finish your checklist. And he's like, no. I did my checklist. He's like, you need to come in, please. You did not do the checklist. So he comes in. She shows him the checklist. It's not done. She's like, I swear to God, I did this checklist. And she's like, well, I'm going to have to write you up. He's like, I did. Well, she's like, well, what happened? Was there anything strange that happened? So he tells her about what happened that evening. So they go to the cameras and they watch. They see him go into the elevator, go to this location where there was that water, but he doesn't move. He stands motionless there for hours and hours and hours, does not move, like completely like a mannequin, a statue. And then all of a sudden he just starts moving again, walks back down, finishes his end of the day and leaves. So he did not do anything. He says, I wouldn't have believed it. He says, but I saw it with my own eyes. I literally saw this video of me not doing anything. We fast forwarded for hours and hours. I was just motionless, not moving. And so then he got written up. So what had happened transpired from that is that it started to go around the hotel that he was a very strange guy. They're passing this around and he says it became almost unbearable at work that he was just like, I'm done. I'm not handling this anymore. I'm going to go back. I believed he lived in Florida, actually. He's like, I'm going to drive down. So he called his mom on coming, packed up everything into his car, started leaving. Wasn't out of Michigan yet. And there was a rest stop, like just the side of the road, had some bathrooms. That was it. Not like a gas station or anything like that. It was like an information booth kind of thing. And he goes to go in. And coming out is this hooded figure that almost knocks him over. And he's like, not putting this together yet. He walks in. Out of the women's bathroom is like this pool of water coming out of the women's bathroom. So again, we have this water, this stanky water. Again, like not only did it happen in the first time when it was pouring rain, it happened in the second time where he's mopping that up. And now we have this again. So he went to the bathroom. He goes to one of the urinals and he sees out of his corner of his eye, this hooded figure enter into the bathroom. It goes into the stall right next to him, but he's on a urinal, which is an open area, but the stall's right next to him. He says he can start hearing noises coming from this stall. It wasn't like anything sick if people are thinking that, but it was just these very strange noises. And he's like, that's it. I'm done. I'm getting out of here. So he goes to go wash his hands. And out of the stall, he hears his name being called, Andy. And he says it like put him in a trance. He said it was like this seductive, like he was being hypnotized. And he started to turn to go to the stall, but he snapped out of it. He washed his face. He splashed some water on his face. He's like, oh, what is going on? And he goes to leave. And then the voice like commands him, Andy. He says he turned around, walked towards a stall. He put his hand on to open it. And that's the last thing he remembers. The next thing we know that he told us is that he woke up in his car, sitting outside of this rest stop. Hours and hours had passed. His car was running. It was almost out of gas. He says it was almost a full tank prior to this. So it was almost out of gas. He had bile, like vomit bile all over his shirt. And he had wet himself as well. He had peed his pants. And when he came to his senses, he did not know what was going on. He was terrified, horrified. He called his mom. He's like, "Mom, I'm coming home right now. There's something wrong." And he's like, "I need you to make me a psychiatric doctor's appointment." And he was able to make it to a gas station, which was really, really close, which was very handy because he said he was on fumes, filled up with gas, and he drove without stopping all the way home. And that is the story of Andy.
What drew you to this story? You said that this story stood out for you the most out of others. What was that?
Because of how it affected him so much.
Mm-hmm.
There's many people who have experiences and they're able to kind of deal with it because, well, it could be this, it could be that. You know, they're able to say what it was. With Andy, there was not really anything in particular. It was like, he came to me looking for answers. I need some answers.
Mm-hmm.
I need help with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I've not forgotten that story. And whenever I talk to people, it's always in the back of my mind. I talk to guests, and just recently I had a guest on who talked about alien abduction, but through consciousness, like abducting your consciousness and your body remains while your conscious is away. That to me was the best explanation that I could come up with. I believe there was an abduction, but how or why, or like, that was the biggest questions. But if he remained motionless for hours and hours in the hotel, and if we say that his consciousness was abducted, that would make complete sense. That would make sense as to why his body remained and with him with not having any memories. Now, he went to the psychiatric doctor and they just said, "Oh, you're just sleepwalking. That's it. You're overactive sleepwalker." It was not an answer. That was an excuse. You know, it's kind of like, we have no idea, so we're just going to say something. That's all. And that's the problem that I feel that we have now these days is people don't want to dive deep enough. It's because they're worried about tarnishing their reputation, because if they tell, well, this is something more than I can help you with, it'll tarnish my reputation if I try to dig deeper. But it's my ego because I can't give you an answer. That's why it stuck out to me, because how it affected him. During the interview, you could see how much this affected him. And I genuinely wanted to help him. And I still do. You know, we have a very loose relationship of like emailing back and forth. So like I will message him and then it'll be like a month or two, then he will message me back. And it's very slow like that. And after I had this interview with Daniel from the Inti Seti Institute, which is dream study, an extraterrestrial, something like that. I forget the name of it. Sorry, I apologize. But he has this, and he's a psychologist as well. This is what he's planning on doing, is to figure these things out, because he's had his own experiences. So I believe this is what happened. So I messaged Andy and I said, "Andy, you know, this is what I think possibly could have happened." We don't really know. We can speculate, but we don't know. And perhaps some regressive hypnotherapy actually would help that scenario, though it might be too traumatic as well, because I think it was traumatic. It's traumatic as it stands. It could even get worse if he has this regressive hypnotherapy as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, definitely his consciousness was hijacked.
Yes.
There are techniques. He just needs to work on this and to make himself very strong in various aspects, and that's doable so that this wouldn't happen. This happens in general. It might happen not to such extent, but sometimes we just out of it. We're here, and then next thing we know, okay, where was I? So what happened during that moment?
Yeah. That's the biggest question. What happened during that moment?
Yeah.
I agree. That is the mystery.
Yes.
Well,
it's fairly common process that we just don't pay attention to it, but it's good that we start looking at it when we see these cases where it's just exaggerated, really. That was too much.
I agree. Yeah. I totally agree with you.
Very interesting. And this brought me to a question that I had when I looked at your Facebook profile, which said that you're a host of Codega's Codex of Curiosities and also a dream walker and quantum leaper. So, what do you mean by that?
That's a great question. So that's more for, I don't want to say for fun, but something else that happens to me is I have very, very intense, crazy dreams. I don't want to say I have complete control over my dreams, but a lot of times I'm not a lucid dreamer, but I get very close to it. And the dreams, though, have taken on a life of their own sometimes. And I don't believe that dreams themselves are just brains going over things that happened during the day. Oh, we're just de-stressing or reducing that pressure. Or I don't believe that at all. I believe that our dreams, we're actually able to access these other realities that you said. You know how we said we layers of dimensions? That's what I believe dreams are able to do. We're able to traverse through them because we leave our physical body and we're able to go into these other locations. Now, some of the dreams that I've had have been so intense. Some of them have been predictive, like things have actually happened. I had one that I had an event happen. I'm going to be very vague on this, but the event was very specific in real life. I had a very specific argument, discussion with a woman, and things were said very specifically. Now, I was with my wife, and I journal every single one of my dreams. I write every one of them down, and I was going through my dream journal for another reason, looking for something, and I came across this one specific dream. I said to my wife, I said, "Hey, when did we go to this event?" And she told me the day. And she said, "Oh, I think that was in February." But I'm like, no, 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 no. What day specifically? It was Sunday. I'm like, no, no, no. Specific date. So she gave me the specific date. So we'll say that was like February 24th, 2022. Okay. 4 years prior to the specific day, I had that exact dream of that exact scenario, that exact discussion, the exact words spoken. So I told my wife, I'm like, take a look at this, have a read of this, because she was there. And she's like, this is freaking me out because it was extremely specific. It was very, very specific on the discussion that was had and the location it was as well. So I've had predictive dreams that are coming true. That one was specifically to the date. I've had other dreams. When I said quantum leaper, if you've ever seen the movie or the TV show that was called Quantum Leap with Sam Beckett, where he would jump, his consciousness would jump from himself into another person's body, and he would take over that person and accomplish a task that was supposed to happen. Like he changed the past for that person so that they could go into a different route. You know, maybe they were supposed to, their sister was going to die and they needed to prevent that. And I've had dreams that are so vivid that I'm doing this. I've entered into the body of another person. I'm in their life. I'm in their family. And I know who I am, but I know that I'm in the body of this different person. And one of them was specifically to prevent my sister from being killed in a gas station robbery. And she was actually part of the robbers. She wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't like she was intending to rob this. She was with some people who robbed this gas station. And I needed to prevent that incident from happening. And this is multiple times where I have these dreams. And then I talk to certain people about trying to get back home as well. You know, I met with this one scientist and he described the Van Allen radiation belt and how I needed to traverse through it by inserting a heavy mass object such as the moon to pass through my dimension. I mean, that dimension I was in to get back to my world, you know, and as a scientist, and he drew down this diagram as well. And I literally was able to recreate this diagram. I draw the diagrams, things that I see. I find pictures that are similar and I recreate them in my dream journal as well. So that's why I say I'm a dream walker and a quantum leaper, because I feel that there are dreams that we do recreate things that happen during the day, but there are other dreams where we actually go different places.
That is amazing. And it brought me actually to the beginning of our conversation when you told that story, when you went above your body and looked at everything from that perspective. Did you find an answer to that? What was that?
We all have an astral body, which is our consciousness, because there are people who meditate to try to separate, go into the astral plane. And for me, it was just this force of exertion on my physical body that I was able to separate for that moment. My wife has a very good friend who it happens almost naturally, and it has terrified her because sometimes she'll wake up, go to the fridge to get something to eat, and she can't grab the fridge. Her hand's going through the fridge. You know, she goes to turn on the light and she can't turn on the light, and then she sees herself sleeping. And this has happened multiple times. So what it was, it's literally your consciousness or your astral self being outside of your body. People train to do that. It happened kind of naturally. I forced myself to do it in a way. Unconsciously, I did not mean for it to happen, but it did happen.
Yes, and why I thought about that, because you were talking about your dreams and like lucid dreams in a way. You have very active astral body because astral body is usually associated with dreaming.
Yes.
And that ties to that experience. So you had already back then this active astral body that now you are experiencing the same, but through your dreams.
Yes, exactly. I agree totally with you. Yeah, I'm separating, my consciousness is separating, my astral body is separating, and I am going places, whether it be forward, backwards, sideways, forward, backward in time, sideways in different parallel universes or dimensions. It all happens.
Yeah. And I was wondering, maybe you've tried this. I've read that if you start making maps of those places where you are in your dream, you can create a map. Actually, it's not that huge, although you can see other dimensions. But when you start putting things into perspective, you will be able to see the world that you are being in your dreams. What do you think?
I have never done that, but that sounds intriguing. It's something, like I've never thought of drawing out a map of location. Like there has been somewhere, but my maps that I've drawn sometimes are much more localized. Like I went down this road and then I turned this way and then I was at this place, but I've never thought of moving backwards. It kind of like zooming out when you're on Google Maps or something like that into something far greater. I've not attempted that, but that's really interesting. Like I do document every one of them, like what style of dream this is, what it represented, or it was with aliens, it was with time travel or something like that. So maybe I can start pooling them together and to see what I come up with.
And you'll start seeing all those connections because, like you said, everything is connected.
It's true.
And creating those maps can connect and create a whole universe that you will be surprised. I'm curious when you do it. If you do it and when you start seeing something, maybe you can come to our podcast to talk again.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be a cartographer now. This magical
Yes.
profession of a cartographer of the dream world, the dreamscape.
Yes. Yeah. Why not? That would be exciting.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Yes. And with everything that you mentioned, that the more you learn, the more you see that you don't know so many things, what would be the next thing you would like to explore?
Great question. The next thing I would like to explore and to see perhaps is the connection between the gods of our ancient past, our ancient history. We have this pantheon of gods, but I believe that they're all connected. I'd love to look into that further and deeper, because there's so many similarities between like the Egyptians and the Mayan and the Aztec and the Norse and the Greek. There is a lot of connections between them. And is to find those connections to say, well, actually, this is the same person. And how did they come up with the same motif or the same person? Each culture, even some of them separated by not only distance, but time as well. Why are they having the same type of pantheon? Why is there these similarities? Because I don't believe that they're mythological beings. I believe that they are actual beings that presented themselves as gods to these people. But I would like to look much further into that.
Love it. I love it. And maybe we'll have another podcast on that.
Historian. There we go. Yes.
Yeah, but I agree with that. And there is this notion that those gods, these are creatures or beings, and they're participating in many processes in our worlds that they're kind of migrating from one pantheon to another one. So you can see the same features in different pantheons. Like, for example, a person who is having problems with the leg from Scandinavia, and then it's in other pantheons. So you can see certain feature that will be in many of those pantheons.
Exactly. Like we have, like in the Egyptians, they have Anubis, and in like the Aztec, they have, his name is Xoro, I think it is. And they also have a dog-headed god as well. So why was there these similarities? Like everybody knows Anubis, but these other pantheons had these dog-headed gods. It's like, where did they come from? Why do we have that in the Aztecs as well? Very interesting. Something that needs to be delved into deeper.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And one more question. What is the most challenging part of being a Codega?
It's not knowing all the answers, not knowing most of the answers, and wanting to be able to give people answers. I find that the hardest part is that I want to give people the answers, but I don't have them. None of us have all the answers. And if someone claims to have all the answers, then they're lying. But I'd say that's the hardest part, is not having the answers, to not be able to help people. I want to help people, and sometimes I can't. And like I said, I never give up on trying to help people. Like Andy, always in the back of my mind about people that I've talked to. I don't forget the people that I've talked to. It's like, I do respect those people who have all done the research, but I have a stronger feeling for those who've had the experiences. I love hearing from people who've done the research. I do. People who've had the experiences, I'm trying to find you answers.
And how can people learn about what you do and also bring their stories to you?
Well, like yourself, you can find me on Facebook, Rye Voss. I'm on Facebook. You can reach out to me. And the show name, Codega's Codex of Curiosities. I'm on all the platforms, audio and video. And if you want to reach out, if you're not on Facebook, then you can just message me through email, which is codexofcuriosities@gmail.com. You can find me there and watch a couple episodes and see if it's a fit for you.
Thank you so much. We had such an engaging conversation, so many insights. Thank you so much. Is there anything that maybe we didn't cover, I didn't ask, but you would like still to share with our listeners?
I think that is everything. The bottom line is we all don't know, and we're all searching for the same. We're all searching for answers, and just quit being so divided. That's all I would say is just quit being so divided. That's what they want us to be divided, but we're so much more similar and we have so much more in common. Just talk to your neighbors.
Very, very good advice. Thank you so much. I absolutely agree with that. I wish you all the best. Continue your amazing podcast. Bring the light to people, especially in these times of the change. This is very, very important. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Dear listeners, I hope you found our Magical Professions podcast episode insightful. As we concluded, I'd like to extend a heartfelt invitation to all of you. Your stories, encounters, and knowledge are invaluable to us, and we want you to be a part of this mystical journey. Have you ever had a brush with a magical profession, a strange encounter, or stumbled upon hidden knowledge? Do you possess ancient scrolls, widespread tales, or first-hand experiences that you believe belong in the spotlight? Are you aware of a sci-fi or fantasy book or a movie with magical professionals in it? We want to hear from you. At Magical Professions, we cherish the power of collective wisdom and the magic of shared experiences. So don't be shy. Reach out to us with your stories, sources, or any information about magical professions you would like to share. You can connect with us via email at magicalprofessions@gmail.com or through our social media channels. Your contribution could become the heart of a future episode, and together we'll weave an even richer tapestry of wonder. Thank you for joining us on this mystical journey. Remember, the magic is not just in the stories we tell, but in the connections we make. Until next time, keep the magic alive, and may your world be ever more enchanting. I can't wait to hear from you.